It's a strange stereotype that we have in our head about like whoever makes less is like automatically the woman. You even see it like right here. I'm only gonna warn you one time. Prepare yourself for rage bait. Today, I'm gonna be reacting to Jubilee's middle ground, rich men versus poor men.
Step forward if you've made less than 1K in 2024. Less than 10K in 2024.
Oh man.
Less than 40K in 2024. Less than 60K in 2024.
Okay, that's all right.
Less than 300K in 2024.
Okay.
Less than 600K in 2024.
Between 60 and 300,000.
Less than 5 million in 2024. Less than 9 million in 2024.
Less than 10. Is that even enough?
Rich people should be taxed more.
I remember back when, America was first starting and taxes were looked at as a privilege. Like it was something that people looked forward to. People, use it as a badge of honor that they had made it to a point where they could use their success to benefit the rest of society. It was something that they used as like a stamp of, I've made it, I've done my part, I've become so successful that now I can give back at such an extraordinary level. Now this is also dependent on taxes being used, in the correct way to like actually benefit society and not, go to corrupt politicians. But overall, like, especially as someone who's considered like upper middle class, rich, someone who's considered wealthy, I have no problem and think that I should be taxed higher. I purposely don't take advantage of tax loopholes that I could, even though it'd be very easy to, because I would rather that money, instead of it, being saved and going directly to myself, I'd rather go to fund school systems and, other institutions that can't get funding other ways.
Government is, captured.
I like Kyle already. So he talked about your tax money going toward things that improve your daily lives. Like we all share the same public roads. We all benefit from the kids staying in school and not robbing your house while you're at work. We all benefit from appropriate uses of taxes. I think the idea that taxation is theft, or some of the other ideas that you hear about how property taxes are a scam and stuff like that, I think that is rooted in, number one, not knowing exactly where your taxes go. Your tax dollars get used in your community in ways that definitely benefit you. Even though there's a certain pothole in the roads that you feel that should be fixed, and I agree, it probably should be fixed, a lot of your tax dollars go toward public services such as police, your fire department, your local library, your public school system that's near your school. I mean, that's keeping those local kids out of trouble. Your tax dollars are going toward educating the kids that are in your community and lifting them up. And when those kids are lifted up, they're way less likely to do stupid stuff to try to get money.
Special interest lobby groups that lobby on behalf of their constituents, corporations, and they write the tax code, and the tax code is written in a way that benefits corporations and it disadvantages working class people. And the very fact that you can tax an income, for instance, and not tax what they call unrealized gains is a great injustice in our society.
But then you take a loan against it and then profit from the loan.
You can buy Twitter off of your, with a leverage buyout by using your unrealized gains as collateral. But when it comes time to tax those unrealized gains, oh, sorry, they're unrealized. You don't have it. It's not actually materially a part of it.
So don't know that I'm on board with the taxing unrealized gains, but the big thing that had me walking out here is you constantly see that like billionaires, millionaires, et cetera, they pay a lower marginal tax rate than like teachers and stuff. And that is like the biggest thing to me that like never quite made sense. Like if we're all kind of in this system together, why are we not at least all paying the same percentage of our?
Because we're not in this system together. It's two tiered. There's a separate rules for the rich as there are for the poor, and the rich play by a different game.
Let's invite the disagreeers.
The reason why I didn't step forward, which was, should rich people pay more taxes? If I could know with certainty that my taxes, paying more of them, would go to benefit schools or homeless veterans or, struggling single moms or, whatever the causes are, I'd be glad to. my concern is that once that money's gone, it can go off to fund war crimes in other countries and bomb villages to take their oil and all this other bullshit. And when I keep more of my money, like there's a school maybe like 12 minutes from my house where I paid all the lunch debt for that school, and that was fine for me to do. But had I not had that money to pay that lunch debt because it went to the government, I don't know if that would go to that school or if it's going to go bomb some country, right? So that is my sort of this is the implication where I don't trust the U.S. government to use the money in the same benevolent way that I might if I had more of it to then do the programs and the passions that I have to help people.
This is why they say money is political. The guy that earns around $5 million a year wants to give his money to causes that uplift his community. However, the money that he's taxed on goes to things that he doesn't care about. In his situation, it's kind of a good thing. He's actually using his money to uplift his community. In other situations, there are people that would get money and sit on their hands. They're like, I'm not helping anybody but myself and not trying to make the world around me better. Where this circles back into politics is a lot of our tax dollars does get spent on the military-industrial complex, when we could spend a lot more money like investing in ourselves, investing in infrastructure, schools, making sure that young Americans have good jobs so they can contribute more tax dollars into our economy.
The reason that we don't trust the U.S. government, because I don't trust it either, is because of who controls the government. And who controls the government are capitalists. So.
Oh, that's what I forgot to talk about. The reason why politics and money are literally inseparable, especially in America, is because the people that we vote for influence how our tax dollars are spent. We can talk about school choice vouchers, which is code for saying we're going to take money out of public education and give it to the people that already have a lot of money to fund sending their kids to private school. The kids that are going to go to private school are going to get a private school education. It's probably going to be a pretty good education because they already come from money. The negative side of this is those kids that are in public school that have an underfunded education, there's no other option for them to get educated. There's no other place that they can go other than school. When you have money, you have multiple options on how and where you want to get educated. Whenever you don't have money, you don't have those types of options. And using our taxpayer money to give the people that already have the most amount of access to education even more access, number one, it's already unfair to the people who were born in a situation where they have less money than other people. And number two, you're simply just enriching the people that already have the means to gain upward mobility. You're just basically pumping them up.
Back to capitalism. It would be great for our money to be used to fund schools and all these programs, wonderful. But they're not. You're right. They're going to the weapons industry instead.
Yeah. I think another thing, like a misconception a lot of people have, is like the rich don't pay taxes at all. If you look at corporate like payroll tax, like that's like the taxes that we pay. By far in America, corporations pay the most taxes in payroll. That is like what, like for example, but it is coming from other people's checks, but we factor that into their salary, right? We know that we're going to have to pay taxes on that. That's one thing to think about. I do think that the system is set up for the rich just make way more money, especially with the unrealized gains, like leveraging that.
We like to say, like, we want everyone to pay the same percent, same stuff like that. But it's not like rich people, massive business owners use less government services. They are using these roads way more. They are using all these things so much more than the average person who just needs to drive to work. If you need a million trucks going places, like it wouldn't be unfair for these people to pay more because they use more, because they're bigger entities.
I think sometimes people are mad and they're angry about wealth inequality, and they think that like taxing people will solve wealth inequality. And like I think it might solve it on like a numbers basis, but I just don't know that that's the right thing.
Okay, so the money that the government doesn't receive by taxing billionaires and multinational corporations, they have to come up with the money still. So what do? They borrow it. They borrow it from corporations when they could have just taxed them. And when you borrow from billionaires and these large corporations, you then have to pay them interest. The government has to pay all this interest on the money that they should have just taxed them in the first place. So that's why you have 30 trillion. I mean, the national debt is a scam in and of itself. The fact that people bring that up as a talking point is ludicrous.
Hey, Skip. Okay, glad we're all on the same page here. I
grew up in a pretty traditional Muslim household, and it's like very common for like the man to kind of be the breadwinner, and like that's the tradition I grew up. So I have very strong beliefs in that. I do think that there are abstractions, like there are times where women are the breadwinners and vice versa, but I don't think that it should, like for me, like the way that I've grown up, the way that my family's grown up for many years, many generations, it's been a tradition that like the man is very responsible for taking care of his family and the financials of kind of this unit. And I don't plan on changing that. So it's something I just believe in. But that doesn't mean there's room for abstractions. People can switch it up. But yeah, that's what I believe.
I am curious what everyone else has to say. I grew up in an environment where my dad was the main breadwinner. He took care of literally all the bills, made sure that everything was paid. Even now, like I have conversations with my mom and she like literally has no idea about anything personal finance related. It's almost like the lady doesn't live in the same reality as us, and I don't think we should be shielding full-grown adults from the financial reality of your situation. I mean, we would have been, like, even as a kid, I knew that we would have been in trouble if something happened to my dad. So ultimately, I think that the male breadwinner is, number one, an outdated mindset. Number two, it holds half of the population back from even learning or being engaged with money in a way that, any adult should be. So let's see what everyone else has to say.
Can the disagreeers please step forward?
The reason why I disagreed is because I think
Bro also basically said he agrees only because that's the way it's always been done.
you just do whatever works for your relationship. In my relationship personally, yes, I'm the one who does the providing and the protecting, and that works great for us. But that doesn't mean it works well for everybody else. And I mean, if you're dating a boss lady who works in tech and she makes like $500,000 a year, like you don't need to stretch yourself out if you're like, you work in a factory making $36K.
So I agree with you 100%. I think you should do whatever works best for y'all relationship. But I notice now in modern dating, a lot of women have this expectation on, the man should be doing this, and that. And I don't necessarily like that because these expectations put you in a weird position, especially if you feel like you're not really receiving much in return.
In my current relationship, I was so upfront with my partner. I said, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm not going to be able to be the sole provider. I want to be a high school teacher, maybe a college teacher. That's my passion. That's what I want to do. That's how I want to give back to the world.
That's
and she said, I love that about you. That's one of my favorite things about you. And we're going to make that work. I'm going to work. She's going to work. And we got to get through it somehow. It's really hard to survive in this capitalist society right now with having just one provider. I mean, I think everyone on this side of the room probably can if you're the rich man, but a lot of us, we need two incomes. It's just not possible for the man to be the sole provider, breadwinner.
The reason that I put the expectation on myself is because like I also expect other expectations of my wife, right? Like I'm not going to marry a woman that's not going to be able to take care of my children, right? Like I think that's one expectation that I have. And once again, this is not an arbitrary thing where it's like it has to be this way or that way. It's just what I believe.
I think we all have our expectations in relationships, and as long as we communicate those with a partner and are super upfront with that, there's no problem.
I only disagree with the characterization of the premise that men should be the breadwinner, as if we should be conforming to traditional gender roles in this society.
I think there's a term that I learned maybe last year is financial compatibility. And I think that's one thing that is really important in a relationship, because if you're, making a lot of money and your partner isn't really, but I personally think that a relationship, both people should work, both people should be, just contributing. But if someone's making a lot more than the other one, then it will always feel just incompatible, because it'll always cause the other person to feel, like I'm paying more, I'm contributing more, I'm working more.
I was gonna say, I think there's a bit of nuance there. I'm in a polyamorous relationship where I make significantly more than my partners. One of them is an RBT, so they work, minimum wage, working for schools, working grueling hours with kids with disabilities, and so it's a very hard life for them. And we've been together for over 3 years now. And there's never been a sense of me putting myself and my income above them, or using that as hey, I'm going to lead the household and I'm going to make the decisions on my own because I'm the primary one bringing in the significant, revenue into the household. It definitely comes down to the relationship itself, because they knew me when I was working for minimum wage jobs. And so because of that, just because I'm in a place now tomorrow I could have nothing. I know that the love would still be there and a relationship would still be strong. So while there can be definitely situations where an income, inequality would impact a relationship, I think it speaks more so to the depth and the strength of the relationship itself, rather than the inequality being the main driver for any sort of issues in that relationship.
Have you never felt that it's just kind of unfair that you're putting so much in and the other, like, I'm just generally.
Yeah, no, not at all. Because I've been in relationships where I was the one who was working at Chick-fil-A making like $9.25 an hour, and I was like, my girlfriend had like a $60,000 job in DC, and I was like, oh my God, like, thank you so much for like taking me out to dinner or something. And so that mentality of, that reciprocity of like, if I'm going to be there for you emotionally, you're helping me with my finances, we're in this together as a partnership. That's what's really carried those relationships through. And I've never, again, I know that everything could disappear tomorrow. So there's no feeling of, well, I'm doing all this, why are you not putting in as much effort? Like, they're working super hard. And so just because they didn't have the same connections or opportunities that I had means nothing to the fact that they're like worth less or something to me.
To piggyback off that too, for me in my relationships, I've always made more, and it didn't really tend to bother me. I think people are driven by passion, and not all careers pay the same. But if the person I'm with is really passionate about what they're doing, I admire that.
That speaks a lot to me, because ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be like so rich and successful to where like my wife didn't have to work if she didn't want to. My kids could do whatever the hell they wanted to do. And so
how many other black people feel that way? Like, I know for me personally, like, it wasn't modeled for me growing up, because both of my parents did work. But I do remember, like, there was a conversation that my dad had with my mom, was like, you don't really have to work. But my mom, like, really wanted to go back to work either way it went. I feel like we've been conditioned into believing that, oh yeah, the man should be able to take care of the household and, provide for a full family with, one income. And maybe that was possible back when we were growing up and as kids, but that is most certainly not possible with most jobs today. If I'm getting my stats correct, I think like somewhere between 60 to 70% of people make like less than $60,000 every single year. And $60,000 is not enough to take care of, for a person household, especially in a city. Maybe if you live like in other parts of the country where the cost of living is a lot less than in cities, maybe that is possible. But you'd also have to be working out in the middle of nowhere with a $60,000 job. I'm not sure. I think it's one of those things that like we've been programmed into thinking that is normal, when honestly we create our own normality. There's really no such thing as what's normal. Just like the other guy was speaking about, like how, in his culture, he was raised that, like the man takes care of the family. There are other cultures out there where that's not entirely true. So depending on where you just so happen to grow up in the world, I mean, you have financial influences that shape your perception of what reality is supposed to look like. And I think it also, since we are talking about men here, it makes us feel like less than men when we can't stand up to those ideas that we have of what life should look like for ourselves that we've imagined or have been put into us growing up.
Did that with my ex when I was thriving. Like, we didn't have kids. Like, I got an episode for that, Jubilee. You know what I mean, right? But not, we didn't have kids, but it was just the fact that my ex didn't have to work, and I helped put her in that position. So that made me feel good. I think a lot of people in relationships, there's an ego thing with it. So like if the man ain't making enough money, he feels less than a man, and then he treats his girl a different way, and then that creates problems. Or his girl don't respect him or treats him a different way, and then that creates problems. I think as long as you're doing what works for your relationship, like old boy said right here, right? I think that's what matters most.
It's a cultural issue.
It's also like an antiquated approach, right? Like, what is the term, trad wife or something?
Traditional.
Yeah, like.
Well, traditional.
Yeah.
Which I don't even care for. Like, I don't, like, bro, like, I've been in 5 different committed relationships, but my whole thing is, I don't expect my girl to cook for me. I don't expect her to clean for me. I don't expect you to do nothing for me except be yourself.
Right.
As long as
She's
like
not
we
your
good,
mom.
we good.
No, I think what you're touching on is that, and what you've touched on as well, is there's all these different ways that relationships can work. And I think they can work in every way. I want a different relationship than what you want, but both can absolutely work, and there are pitfalls for both too, and you just have to avoid those pitfalls. Of course, yeah.
You know, I'm married, I have 2 kids, and I would say have more of a traditional relationship, and I love it, and it's wonderful, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But I know that what works for me doesn't necessarily work for everybody in this room.
I don't know about you guys too, but like, so in the relationships I've been in, I have made more than my partner, but if they did make more than me, I would be stoked.
Yeah, I would love to say that too.
Right, like who would get mad about that?
I will put on the maid dress and I will mop the floor.
Yeah, dude, yeah.
I'll be the coolest house husband ever.
Yeah, it is an ego.
Walking home with a little glass.
All right. I don't know why we do this, guys. We've all of a sudden like turned into like housewives whenever we're talking about. Oh yeah, we want our women to make more than us. So I think that's it's a strange thing. It's a strange stereotype that we have in our head about like whoever makes less is like automatically the woman. You even see it like right here. But I have helped my wife negotiate for raises like at old jobs. She'll like text me saying that, okay, they're going to give her this amount of money. And I'm like, hey, ask for this much. And I'm like, hey, name this reason, and this reason why you should justify it. And you probably won't get that much, but hopefully we'll pick up a few more dollars in this raise. And I remember right before I left my last job, we were like filing taxes. And I was like, oh man, we as a couple for the first time ever made $100,000 together. And we haven't made $100,000 together since. But it felt good that we were working together as a team and like making our financial dreams together a reality. It's one of those things that you're going to have to talk to your partner about. Like find out before you get married, like as the relationship gets more serious, see what their ideas about money are. Like how did money like influence their family life growing up? For example, my wife did grow up in a traditional family where her dad took care of everything. And I think it was a different expectation that she went into a relationship and eventually a marriage with somebody who expects her to be a little bit more of a partner. Like I said earlier, we don't live in the days anymore where $60,000 can take care of a full family of 4 people and then have the extra luxuries that we want to have for life. What's funny is I don't even think the ideas that we had like before we got married even match up to what really happened in our financial relationship after we got married. Like I remember back when we were dating, we were talking about, okay, one person's income should be enough to cover the entirety of the bills. So you should be able to pay like the mortgage, all the household bills, gas, if there's any kind of car notes or anything on there. One person's finances should be able to take care of all that. And the other person's finances we can have fun with, we can invest, and we can save with. And, fast forward years later, that's not how it turned out.
And I'll be saying like, can I get you anything, honey? Like, would you like to take your shoes off, give you a little massage, whatever you need?
I kind of love spoiling my wife and my kids. I mean, partly because I grew up, my mom was making $10 an hour raising 3 kids. So the fact that now I'm in a position where I can, spoil the people that I'm with, I kind of love doing that.
I know I'm not going to be able to spoil her with like 1 million diamond rings and stuff like that, but I can spoil her in other ways. I can make dinner for us. I can plan things for us.
There's balance, so someone could be supporting financially, but someone else is supporting emotionally. And I think as long as you're aware of that balance, that could be like a secret to a healthy relationship. But if that balance kind of fades out in the dark, then that's when,
Yeah. In my tradition, we have a very strong belief that like marriage is like a fortress. It's like as you're one pillar of it, your wife is another. And in America, we have this conception of like love marriages. You marry people you love. In Islam, we have a much more like deeper sense of that, in the sense of like it's not just love, it's family ties. Like your family and their family are now one unit.
Families are getting married.
And so you have like multiple pillars, and then you have like, if you're religious, right, you have like this ethical and moral compass that aligns with the other, and that's another compass. And then like, can you benefit each other in knowledge as well? So there's many other pillars. So if one breaks, there's another to stand on.
Becoming rich is easier now.
I think I kind of get what he's trying to say. He's like, your marriage is basically built on more than just like, being in love. Because like sometimes like we can like fall in and out of love, or even lust. Like it fades, it waxes, it wanes. Your relationship like grows and changes. But I think what he's trying to say is like the more that you have in common with each other and the more that you align on like different things, I can't think of the word. It would be like the more cohesive of a unit that you would be together. I think I kind of like the idea of that.
It ever has been.
I grew up pretty much at the poverty line. So the opportunities that my mom had were so limited to compared to what the opportunities that I have today. And, you know, I was able to, I mean, frankly, make millions and millions of dollars in my 20s because of all the opportunities that we have here in the West and in in America, and especially in modern times, where if you just zoom out, a lot of those opportunities weren't available. You know, even just like 50 years ago, it would be different.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, I think not only is there opportunity, but the internet has just enabled us to learn anything we want.
I think the fact that you can just be making money off of your laptop just anywhere in the world is revolutionary.
I think there's been a bit of an explosion of non-ethical ways to make money. I feel like that's been a big thing in recent times. Making money off the backs of others has become easier than it ever has been.
It's
I think
been
like
way easier
you can
to
just start
scam
a
people.
podcast and just like on women the whole time, and you'll just like blow up and go crazy. I think like in late stage capitalism, there are so many exploits and things you can do, and I'm not saying you guys have done that specifically. I don't know your stories, but like you can be a landlord and just start charging exorbitant amounts of rent. That's why it's so unaffordable to live, especially here in California. Like there are so many evil ways that people can make money that I think it's easier now than it ever has been if you have sort of sketchy morals.
Is a landlord always an evil way to make money to you?
Honestly, not always, but I would love to see society move away from this, from housing being a form of investment.
So I am a real estate developer, and I just bought a piece of land to build a house. The piece of land just for the dirt, $735,000. Just the permitting, just like literally the fee that I had to pay to get the right to build on that property that I own, 110 grand.
Okay.
It's challenging to offer affordable housing when you're already $800,000 deep and you haven't even put shovel to dirt.
I don't put as much blame on the individual as I do on the systems. I really wish.
I would love to back you up on that. So I actually have a pretty strong thesis on this. So like I bought property and stuff before, and I've realized like the system just favors the rich. And the reason for that is because of interest. Like from this, once again, I tie this back to religion often, but like in Islam, it's like you're not allowed to mess with interest. And the reason for that is because it favors the rich in a way where it pulls away from economic gain from society. And it's like, hey, because I have $100,000, I can pull $1 million of leverage. Well, if you only have 10,000, you can only pull 100,000. And now what's happening today is like these companies like BlackRock and these big institutional holdings, because they already have trillions of dollars, can leverage trillions of more to buy more houses, rising the prices, rising the interest rates for everyone, and you guys suffer the most.
And it incentivizes the most fucked up practices.
Yes.
Like the more you can charge, the higher interest rates you can have, the more you can do, the more you can exploit, the more you can steal,
the more money you have,
the more you get.
The more money you'll make, and eventually you become the bank. That's what rich people have become, you know? And I really hope that I never kind of go down that path. So it's something that, even as us, like I think when you make money, like you'll see a lot of your friends kind of like, you can make a lot more money if you make money, and like you have to really control yourself. That's why I also believe that making a lot of money is actually a curse in a way too. Like there are pros, yes, you can have a lot of nice things, but you also have a lot more options to do bad things, and they might not be clearly bad things, like taking a loan on something bigger, or like they're not inherently bad, but it's like they can hurt someone on the back end, and I just don't believe in that.
I don't necessarily see interest as evil. I mean, there's a cost to debt, right? There's like a time value on money, as we learned. But I do think, to your point, I think that's where a government's duty is to step in and kind of put those guardrails.
Like it's hard not to sometimes, but I do my best not to ever put the blame on the individual, because any individual is not going to be able to change that system that encourages this stuff.
When people learn like to utilize credit in America, I don't know if they even have credit in other countries, or if it's similar to America.
They do, but America is by far the biggest credit lender in the world.
So that, right?
Don't
back in
say it.
2019,
Don't you say it.
nobody ever taught me like how to go about building credit properly, right? But in 2019, I had friends that was doing drop shipping automation, like Amazon automation, right? So I had a friend, they was all running stores. He was charging $8,000 to get into this thing, but I didn't have $8,000 at the time. So I started researching credit. I asked questions from all my little rich friends on Facebook. I went on YouTube. So I did research. I went a different route. I got 3 unsecured credit cards for $1,500. I learned about authorized users. But then I think it was within 3 or 6 months, I was able to get $32,000. And then like a year and a half later, I got over 100 grand. That was from having zero credit. So the thing is, if people actually research credit and learn how to build it properly, it's easy to get money. And the cool thing about credit is, if you invest and you fuck up, you could just let it go to collections and dispute it all out anyway.
Yeah, but you should.
Giving financial advice, especially financially irresponsible advice, is a choice. This is why I hate finance bros on the internet. A lot of what they talk about is like how to build your credit so you can take out a lot of money by using leverage to like make more money. The thing about using leverage to make more money is that it's a super risky move. And if that doesn't work out, guess what? Your stuff is going to collections and your credit is done. If you actually had the money to back up the money that you were getting loaned out to you, the worst case that could happen is that you take a huge loss, you have the money that, you already have the money in cash to cover it, or you have the money in assets to cover it, but you're not, taking a major L, your credit's gonna take a hit, all the purchases that you buy for the next 7 years are going to be way more expensive than they otherwise would have been because you're basically putting it all on red. You're essentially gambling with your financial future by using leverage.
Hold on, let me finish.
There's someone that suffers at the end of that system. So.
I understand.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is though, right? Go about it the right way. Be responsible. Pay your credit, because don't f up intentionally. But what I'm saying is, it's easy to get the money to invest if you know what you're doing. Yeah. But the thing is, if you don't,
it's so sorry. Just to continue. It's so easy to get the money that people will dig themselves in the hole because they see money.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, there's a difference between good debt and bad debt.
Of course.
So I was using my debt for
that ain't
investments.
good debt, bro.
I wasn't just buying like
credit cards though.
I was using
that ain't good
credit
debt.
Cards and then loans.
See, dude, that's
rough,
like
dude.
I agree with you.
Interest?
I agree. But
what are you investing in that makes sense?
Right.
So I was okay. So like, for example, I done like Amazon drop shipping, right? I was making money on cashback.
I ain't never met a rich Amazon dropshipper.
Thing was, I was making.
If you know a millionaire dropshipper, add them in the comments below. I really want to see something.
I was paying my bill every single month. So I wasn't just buying like Beats by Dre.
But where did it go wrong? Because, I mean, with respect, you're on the other side now.
It wasn't like, with my debt. I was paying my bill every single month. I've been day trading since 2014. I wasn't broke. Even like last year, I had my biggest trading day. I made $161,000 in 3 hours. But the thing was, I was making money at passive income, and I trusted some of my rich friends, right, into a bad investment that they ended up rug pulling everybody. And I currently have a lawsuit trying to get my money back. That's why I ended up over here. I always wanted to be on that rich side for this episode. You know what I mean, right?
I feel like your story kind of epitomizes like my worldview on this question, is that it's easier to make money now because there's so many ways of passive income. And that's kind of what I don't like about it, is passive income doesn't really benefit society. You're making money off the work of others instead of off your own work. So you're not really helping anyone except yourself.
We're talking about a societal trend, and you can't disprove that thesis or that premise by citing your own personal story. You have to look at actual data. And when you say it's easier to get rich now than it ever has been, who's getting rich? And if you look at the data, it's the top 1% of the population. And I just thought of some statistics which would help my point, which is to say that, the largest increase in the poverty rate from one year to the next happened in 2021 to 2022. The majority of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. It's a very precarious life for most of us. And we live in a world where 3 Americans own more wealth than 150 million other Americans, the bottom half of the American population. Another statistic is 8 people in the entire world own all of the wealth, own more wealth and power than 90% of the bottom half of the population. I'm sorry, 50% of the bottom half of the population. That's from Oxfam, and that is 4 billion people. So 8, and this is in 2017, mind you. This is 8 people in the world own more wealth than 4 billion people. And, I just think we live in a predatory political economy. And yeah, sure.
So I got a 2-part question for you, right?
Sure.
First part, do you believe in anybody in this half moon shaped circle is better than you?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so if we have personal experiences that we made different kinds of money, do you feel like that could potentially happen for you as well if you apply yourself properly?
I think that it's not about an individual answer to a systemic question. We're talking about institutions, okay? I'm sorry, think about, you're talking about the housing industry, the real estate, how expensive it is. And the reason for that is because the housing industry has been monopolized by pretty much one corporation, Blackstone, which bought up all the housing, all the private property, and raised all the rents. And so you have to compete with that now. And so...
Oh, speaking of Blackstone, if you're a homeowner, you get calls from like at least either every other week or 3 or more times a month from, I have no idea who the organization is, but they're always like, hey, would you like to sell your house? Do you have any other properties that you'd like to sell? Do you know anybody who's looking to sell their house? I've had that happen to me literally every single week ever since I bought my house. It is the most annoying thing ever. And my only response to them is like, whatever price that I see on Zillow, I double it. And I'll tell them, hey, I'll sell my house for like double whatever it's worth. And then they'll be like, oh, I'll get back to you. And then they hang up the phone. And then they call back like 2 weeks later. Hey, are you looking to sell your house? So annoying.
That's why there is no affordable housing anymore. The homelessness has never been higher.
I want to say I agree with your worldview like completely. The reason I step forward for this question is those systems you laid out make it easier for individuals to rise. We cannot all, it's not easier for everyone to make it.
Individuals that have already benefited from generational wealth, from every advantage that
I think there are a lot of like scammy ways that
absolutely, and I'm not saying if you got into
there are
Bitcoin,
a lot of like honest ways.
If you had gotten into Bitcoin in 2014, there's a lot of teenagers that are becoming millionaires, but that's such a small sliver, and it doesn't disprove the entire thesis of this.
When I hear that question, right?
I can see this from both angles. This guy is looking at the overall forest. Like, he's saying that the richest people are getting way richer, which he's not incorrect on. The other guy is looking at the trees themselves. He's saying that, the individual has a lot more opportunity and options to make a lot of money versus back in the day. In a way, they both can be correct.
The hardest thing I have for me is I understand not everybody can get rich, but I truly do believe in America, everybody has the opportunity to be rich. Now, you may come from a different background where it's harder to come up, you know what I mean?
Well, of the two people in question, you have had a harder time, no doubt.
Why? Because of my past, though. Why not, right?
It's because of your race. It's because of the color of your skin.
I was going to say, it's not because of your past, bro. It's because of the financial situation you was born in. If you was born into a situation where your parents had money, if they was able to send you to the best schools and everything like that, you would have way more money than you do right now. So I'm not trying to hear anything about like the individual choices that you make, because you can fail forward if you were born rich and still end up with a ton of money.
Racism is a systemic problem in America.
I don't see my skin color as a problem, because at the end of the day, though, I still educated myself, I applied myself, and yes, I came up before I got scammed last year, you know what I mean? So as a black person,
you should have educated yourself on not getting
let's
scammed.
just say that it really is a disadvantage. That never held me back from doing all the shit.
I'm not saying that you don't have your own personal, optimism for, bootstrapping yourself. I'm saying you're facing institutions that are designed to undermine your livelihood, and that is because of the color of your skin.
I would have to
and I
disagree about
acknowledge
today. I would say historically in America, certainly. I would say in 2024, 2025, whenever this is coming out. I mean, again, we're all here. We're talking.
Yeah.
I've been able to make $2 million a year since I was like 28. Mm-hmm. There's really nothing special about me. I can spot opportunity, and I think that if what you're saying is true, and I was subject to all, I've never felt that the color of my skin is a
millions
barrier.
of other people that do
Well,
not
I'm sure.
share that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And that's the point of the. What's the point of the thesis?
But it's all about belief at the end of the day. Go
and
ahead.
also, remember the prompt was, it's easier today to get rich than it ever has been. There was a point where someone who looked like me wasn't even allowed to buy a house. Yeah. That's not true today. So for me, getting out of that circumstances, building wealth, same thing. Even women weren't allowed to have a bank account in their own name till like the 70s in some states. That now they can, right? And I think it's easier today.
I guess for him, what is your kind of dream state then? Like if it's not today, what period in history is it easier?
I really wanted to hear what he had to say before this other guy jumped in with a follow-up question. I really do think that racism has held back black people from wealth accumulation historically. Now, there are individual black people from almost any and every period of time that have been millionaires. We can think of Madam C.J. Walker. There are individual black people that do make it through, but as a whole, we're not doing as well in general as the rest of our counterparts from different communities. And a lot of it is because of the financial position that we were born into. You can see that where there'll be black people that come from other countries, and number one, selection bias. The black people that come from other countries already have enough money to immigrate from one country to another. I can't say that the same thing about black people that live here. We barely have enough money to move from one state to the other. So to move countries, number one, that takes a ton of money. This all goes back to the financial position that you were born into. Now, there are certain things that you can change about the financial position since, you're here now. You can educate yourself about the basics of personal finance. So whenever you get money, you can take care of it and make it grow. You can educate yourself in a skill, hopefully a high income skill. Right now, my wife is going back to school so she can be a sonographer. Hopefully, out of school, she'll be able to make $80,000 a year. That's going to be huge for our family. So I agree. Historically, it has been more difficult for people that look like me to earn money. And maybe right now it's the best that it's going to get, but that doesn't mean it can't be even better in the future.
We live in a class-based society. There are workers and there are owners, and we are defined by what we do for a living. And if you work for a living, you're in the working class. And if you accrue capital and passive income, like you all were saying, by the hard work of others, then you are a capitalist. If you own the means of production by which workers work those means of production, you are exploiting them. And that's the only way that billionaires are allowed to propagate their wealth.
Let me ask you this. Would you consider anyone with a 401k exploiting people?
No.
Because they hold stocks that are ownership of a business.
So from the reading that I have done, if you are a stock owner, technically you are using your money to buy portions of other people's labor, and you make money off of those stocks based off the hard work of somebody else. Let's see what his response is.
That's also an instrument of class war.
The 401k is an instrument of class war?
Yeah, that's the idea that, look at what BlackRock does. They're gutting workers' pensions. They're gutting your retirement funds. It's not the people that have the 401k, it's the people that are doling out these 401k plans. They are the ones that are taking away from the workers.
So the reason why I disagreed with the prompt.
Oh, okay. So he basically redirected. So he was basically saying that instead of fighting, the people that have 401ks, because that's basically just be like, oh, you're going to be fighting your coworkers because, oh yeah, they're taking advantage of other people. Instead, he said the corporations took pensions off the table. So the only tool that you do have for having a retirement, if you are lucky to have a retirement, is to individually invest in your 401k or your Roth IRA. But either way,
It's primarily based on something outside of finances, which was time. And so a lot of things that I heard was, everyone has access to a laptop, everyone has access to a phone. It's easier than ever with online sources like drop shipping or crypto or things to get rich in today's society. But with the shrinking middle class, more and more people working paycheck to paycheck, not as many people have the time in the day to utilize those resources or even learn how to use them. For example, I grew up with a military background. My parents were both military. I grew up working for Chick-fil-A and as a paintball referee. So I was working a lot of minimum wage jobs, but my parents, who were, upper middle class, gave me the opportunity to learn how to use a computer in my downtime or take a couple months off from working to be able to learn how to do social media, which is what I do now. And now I have the opportunity to make millions. And so it'd be easier for me to sit here and say, wow, it's easier than ever to make money in today's society. But if you even look outside of America as a country and at the global economy as a whole, there are so many millions and millions and millions of people who are sitting here going, what do you mean it's easier than ever to make money? I'm watching the upper 1% get richer and richer, and I'm still here struggling to pay rent and make food every day. And so that's why I was I don't think it's easier. Sure, there are opportunities and a lot of more people have the opportunity, but overall, there's a lot of inequality there that makes it more difficult than ever.
The largest transfer of wealth ever in human history has occurred in the past 40 years. $50 trillion has been basically robbed from the working class, the bottom 90% of Americans, to the top 1%. And that's another example of the disparity, the inequality, economic inequality.
Whose fault do you think that is?
It's the fault of the people that are in charge, obviously, the people that control the economy and subsequently control the government. It's the capitalists, it's the 1%. That is their function in society, to be parasites upon the majority of the population.
There's one thing I have to just disagree on.
Sure.
As far as wealth inequality goes, there's no question. Today, it's more exacerbated than at any other time.
Yes.
There's people that have hundreds of billions of dollars, and there's people that have nothing.
Right.
So that is absolutely true. I think when I sort of zoom out and I look at the history of the world and the fact that we all have electricity and running water and, like heat in our house, if we're lucky enough to have that, I just think I can't look at a time in history where there was a better time to be alive. I mean, times are hard now.
Bro, do not compare my life to that of a medieval peasant. Peasants didn't have to worry about credit card debt. The invention of having negative money is a very recent invention. There was a such thing as like having no money. That's very different than, what a majority of Americans have to go through right now. Like, we can literally have negative money. There's a such thing as having negative net worth. The house that I bought put my net worth in the negatives because I had to borrow the money from the bank because I didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay out in one day for the cost of a house. I think it's one thing to be appreciative of the material conditions that we have that surround us right now, but I think it's a totally different thing to compare our lives currently to someone from a different time period or somebody from a different part of the planet. Because wealth is relative. We all have problems. Even if you're a millionaire, you have $1 million problems. If you got a couple $100,000, you got $100,000 problems. If you're living in poverty, you have major problems. So I don't want to hear that just because you have a roof over your head, running water, and you're barely able to scrape by, that you should be thankful for that. I think we should all be working toward a better life for ourselves, but praising the status quo isn't it.
And I don't want to sound condescending as someone on this side of it saying that life is easy, because I know that life can be hard and it was difficult for me growing up. But there was a time in history where you get your hand chopped off for stealing an onion. like that doesn't happen anymore. At least not in America.
I think both can be true. I think the base standard of living can be higher than it ever has been, while also it being harder than ever to escape from the place that you were born into and the kind of economy that you are a part of.
I don't think it's you have to pick either or. I think it's easy to be poor and it's easy to be rich. It's kind of like this.
That's what I agree
that's
with,
like
100%.
the thought. And sorry,
if it was easy to be rich, then everybody would be rich. If everybody could be a billionaire, then there would be no billionaires.
If it's easy to get a six-pack, which it is, it's just consistency. Why doesn't everyone have a six-pack? I don't have a six-pack.
Here's the thing to his analogy.
A lot of us have different skills, and you'll notice when you start talking to people who earn a lot of money, they're probably no smarter than you are. They have a certain level of skill that allow them access to being able to earn a lot of money. Take a professional athlete, for example. They're in the top 0.01% of athletes in the world, or at least athletes in their local area. More than likely, they're going to be the best or one of the best at what they do. Some people have talents that make it way easier for them to earn money versus other people. But also, the way that I see it is, you're born with talent, but you can acquire skills. There are certain skills that I don't have. In fact, I feel like there are a lot of skills that I don't have. I can control my own clock for the majority of my time. What I lack in talent, I have in time to be able to put the work in to learn new skills that will eventually generate more income for me. Not everyone has the same 24 hours, let's be honest. Right now, my wife is at work. She's not going to get back for about another 2.5 hours. Actually, she has school tonight, so she's probably going to be there for a very long time. But she doesn't have the same amount of hours as me to invest into learning other kinds of skills. She is spending that time investing into educating herself so she can learn a high-value skill so she can earn money as well. But she doesn't have the same 24 hours as me. I think we're kidding ourselves if we believe otherwise.
We're making a broad statement.
Now they're trying
Obviously,
to be
it's
divisive.
not.
All right, bro.
There are people that aren't white that make a lot of money, but I think statistically, generally speaking, it is easier to make money if you are white. It's easier to be advantaged.
You know what I think it is? I don't think it's easier to make money when you're white, but I do think it's way more easier to relate to people that have money when you have similar life experiences as them. Sometimes I do go into rooms and I do end up talking to higher ups in different companies, and sometimes, well, a lot of times they're not the same skin color as me. And sometimes it's how do I kick off this conversation? What I feel sometimes is we don't really have a lot of overlapping interest. So off rip, I don't think it's easier for you to make money as like a white person, but I think it's way easier to relate to other white people because you have similar life experiences or even similar interests.
By these institutions that govern public life if you are a white person, specifically a white male. But, goes back to systemic racism. I mean, the institutions are, capitalism has given way to, like a byproduct of capitalism, in other words, is white supremacy. And, we're in the United States of America. We've had, this country was founded upon slavery and the genocide of the Native Americans, the slavery of African Americans. And that was by white people.
Yeah, I think when you look at the statistics, you see certain demographics succeeding more than other demographics. And you can either look at that and say, oh, there's something inherent about those groups, which is just racism, or you can look at that and say, there must be some societal factors that lead other groups to excelling more than others.
And another point is there have been studies made on, the eligibility of people to acquire a bank loan, for instance. And statistically speaking, it's far easier if you're a white person than a black person. And that's just one of the examples. We have it's easier to get a college education if you're white. It's easier to make money if you're educated. Most white people, have a clear, it's all about equity.
I do want to make one thing clear about my worldview, though, is that...
I'm going to join you guys after. That's okay.
For sure. Is that I think on the left, the left of politics, sometimes it comes across very defeatist when we talk about this, and I never want to be like that. I don't want to say a person of color can't do this, can't do that, because that's also literally just racism, and people on the left do that a lot, sadly.
But the prompt
you can succeed, but it might be a little harder, and that difficulty can appear in a myriad of different ways. And I just think statistics show certain groups are more successful.
I think one thing too I wanted to add that brought me out here, I don't know that it's tremendously more difficult, but it's definitely more difficult, and I think stats show that. And a big thing to me is so much of personal wealth is your home, and there's a huge racial net worth gap, and a lot of that is because of access to property ownership. And that's a big thing that I think, stored capital creates more capital.
Right. So, I mean, we come from a society that, segregation was legal 50, 60 years ago. I mean, that's, just a few generations ago. We're still feeling those reverberations, and, white people want to protect their property, their wealth. Wasn't there the whole thing of white flight, in the 60s, or, as soon as society was desegregated, white people basically said, we're going to take all our capital and move out to the suburbs, and we're going to defund public institutions. We don't have any responsibility to them. And, I just think it's pretty fairly evident at this point that, systemic racism is an issue. And, to acquire wealth, it's far easier if you look the part.
Do you think that will change as time goes on, though? Because I think we are for sure trending the right direction, and that's why I hesitated to come out here. But then bringing up the points of historical wealth and then wealth building off of historical wealth.
I think it's headed in the right direction for sure. I mean, I believe anyone can absolutely succeed in America. Some people will have a harder path than others, but I believe anyone can. Sadly, I don't think everyone can. I feel like that is contradicted by capitalism, but I do think anyone can succeed despite their circumstances.
It goes up based off of personal experience. One thing that I personally hate is this whole victim mindset that a lot of folks in our community especially have. I hate that with a passion. Because as a black dude, how I talk, how I present myself, some people in the comments gonna talk shit. I already know. You know what I mean, right? But my whole thing is I've had so many jobs, and we were speaking about unemployable and whatnot, right? But if you looked at my resume, it's crazy. I've been a flight attendant, I've been a truck driver, I've been a perfume salesman, I've been a street performer on the Las Vegas Strip. I used to work background in porn. As a black dude who's done a whole bunch of shit, it's hard for me to think that I'm at a disadvantage when I've done more shit than the average person has.
I agree with you that everyone should have the mindset that they can succeed. I think
So I'm really interested. I'd really be interested in knowing like what are the backgrounds of like the jobs that everybody on this panel has had, because like Asher has clearly had like a ton of different jobs, but like when you look at his resume, it's all over the place. He was a flight attendant. He sold perfume. He was a dancer on the Las Vegas Strip. I'd have a very hard time like tying all of those jobs together and like trying to figure out what skills is he really good at. Like it seems like he's really, really good at a lot of different things, but maybe he just hasn't found the one thing that he can be like really good at and really succeed at. And I think honestly that's a shame. But the reality of the situation is like he probably had to have all those jobs because like he was just trying to make ends meet. He seems like a super talented guy, but like why isn't he farther ahead in life than he is currently? He wasn't born into a position where he could make the best use of his skills. I realize this is like the third or fourth time where I've said like being born into a position, which kind of makes me realize we are really the current day medieval peasants. But the only person who can make a difference on that is you. So stick with me on this.
On the left that we don't communicate enough is absolutely have the mindset that you can succeed, but that doesn't mean that these systems aren't in place.
And let's say the systems are in place, though, right? Because it was worse back in the day. But let's just say the systems currently are in place. I just think it's a belief factor. Like if you believe like, oh, I'm black, I can't do shit, you ain't gonna try.
The statistics tend to demotivate people, and then that causes lack of action. And it's like
lack of belief.
It's like, for example, like I look at everything as like I only look at the advantages. Like I try to cut out the disadvantages that I have. Maybe I don't even have many, but it's like I hyper focus on like, okay, what advantages do I have, and how can I use them? And that actually promotes to good action and good results.
That's on an individual basis, and I would agree with you. For sure, everyone should take what they got, make it better.
I think you're setting yourself up for self-sabotage, and you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe in your dreams. But I also think it's important to live in reality and realize like where you are in life right now and do what you can with the resources that you have to get to the place where you ultimately want to be. And living in fantasy land about your financial situation isn't going to change anything. You see this a lot with people that day trade. They treat their personal finances like gambling rather than growing a garden. When you're growing a garden, you're supposed to plant the seeds, you're supposed to water the dirt, even though you can't see the results of the action. You have to trust the process of that you're doing the right thing. You water that dirt even though you can't see the seeds anymore, expecting that one day that those seeds are going to sprout and that you're going to reap the benefits of the hard work that you've done. But what we see with day traders is they make a bunch of random decisions thinking that, oh, one of these decisions is going to strike it big. Which you even see with Asher's job history. His job history is, oh, I'm going to do this thing for a little bit of time, I'm going to do this other thing, and none of it actually builds on top of each other. He ends up in a situation where he has a lot of motion but no progress.
The statistics tend to demotivate people, and then that causes lack of action. And it's like
lack of belief.
It's like, for example, like I look at everything as like I only look at the advantages. Like I try to cut out the disadvantages that I have. Maybe I don't even have many, but it's like I hyper focus on like, okay, what advantages do I have, and how can I use them? And that actually promotes to good action and good results.
That's on an individual basis, and I would agree with you. For sure, everyone should take what they got, make it better. We're talking about society as a whole.
I just think you should take that with a grain of salt, though, right? I think like it's like a lot of people don't take it with a grain of salt. Like I have friends that are like, I'm gonna like figure it out one day. Like like it is what it is. Like you're rich. Like you figured it out. Like I can't do that. Like no. Like
nobody's saying we should be apathetic about our situation, but we can recognize the material conditions of our society and the institutions that
Of course.
But
I
govern
think
public life.
The way you beat that is like you focus on what are the advantages that you have and how can I act on those advantages.
Keeping in mind the year that we're in, unless there's something I don't know about, maybe that's true, there's no legal system that says, you are prevented from this opportunity because of your race.
If anything, it's the opposite. We have the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
The fact that I see black people succeeding lets me know I can too, man. I might be at a disadvantage, but I'm gonna grind it out and do my damn thing so I can get there too.
It's just like I'm trying to think outside of the bounds of just like this conversation where we're taking place in America, like looking at society as a whole. Like, if I went overseas, like I'm going to be at a disadvantage to making money. Like we're not talking about being rich, the problem was making money itself. And I think overall cultures, tend to prefer their own, like, and that's just across the board. But I don't think that means that necessarily like it puts you at a disadvantage. But at the same time, there are certain advantages that I have because I'm white in America, and I'm very aware of that. But when it comes to like the baseline of just making money, when it comes to like, okay, being like super successful, like we can argue about, systemic things that are holding people back and we agree and disagree. But just the baseline of making money, I just had to disagree on that.
Being, a white straight male in the United States of America as opposed to a black, queer, female, what is the society set up? Who is the society set up for?
And even making it more personal, like when people are in positions of power and able to choose who they surround themselves with, they tend to go after people that look like themselves in some way, shape, or form. Right. It's why you see like such a large like boys club at the top of like the Fortune 500 CEOs. It's why they make such a big deal about like women in places of power and women who do these things. It's because by and far across the board, it's a lot easier for the guys to be like, that's a man like me. We have a background similar.
You know what? Like I think America is such a big country that you cannot just generalize that rule all over the country. Like they're small cities, small towns with different cities, different states, everything that changes like vastly.
It's a big country, but there's only two classes.
That the people that you love are doing okay. To me, that's ultimate happiness, and there's nothing else that I want other than that. So I'm very happy.
I would have said like you asked me this question like a couple months ago, or like maybe a year ago. It would have been a different question. That's why I hesitated.
Yeah, it depends on who you're with. Yeah, I think that like who you're with in a very close environment is a huge factor. It's going to change that. But I could say that I do live paycheck to paycheck, but I know that I do something that I absolutely love and I'm so passionate about. And
what do you do?
I'm a filmmaker. This year was when I just decided to study acting, and that was truly like that's my true passion, to be honest. Like I love shooting as a hobby, but to like how many people can go to work with a big fat smile on their face, So it's like how many people can do that? Like, dude, I know people who've been doing the same job for 30 years, even though they're making an amazing paycheck, everything. They're like financially, stable, everything. They can go to Saint-Tropez and they just like, it's a beautiful life, right? But he goes to work and he's like, oh my God. That for me is just like, no, like no paycheck is worth that.
Yeah, I would agree. I kind of do something I enjoy on a daily basis too. I help sort of serve the underserved and work on an investing platform that anyone can use. And I just moved to California, so there's a lot to be happy about.
Same.
Yeah.
And I teach, and I love what I do. So,
well, and to what you're saying too, it's really the people you surround yourself with. It's something like you're the average of your best 5 friends or something along those lines. So I've got a lot of good friends and close family, and yeah.
In the United States, I think we have a lot to be happy about and thankful for. Our homes are not being bombed by the U.S. military, so that's nice. That's huge.
That would be like.
Yeah, I think what you said I just related to so fully. Like I am fortunate enough to have my girlfriend who I love so much. We live together, we're happy, and we have a life plan that we're working towards where we're gonna go to college and get married one day and have a wonderful family and have a wonderful life, whether we be at the top of the pay scale or at the bottom. We're gonna make it work and we're gonna be happy. Because like everyone has said here, it's about the people around you. They matter so much more than anything else.
For me, especially like, in the last year or so, and the reason I said that it would be different if you'd asked me a little bit ago, I was, yes, working jobs that I loved, but a large part of me was committed to those jobs more than the rest of the other aspects of my life. So I was putting work over things, chasing a bigger paycheck, chasing a bigger payout, chasing a bigger accolade, chasing an achievement. And even though on the outside to everyone looking in, they were all like, Kai, you've made it, you're 22, you're doing all these cool things in social media, you're traveling the world, you're working with the biggest influencers, why aren't you happy? It was because there was a part of me that had put such a pedestal, or put money on such a pedestal at a young age of seeing it as this thing that once I have money, I'll be happy. And I just had denied myself happiness. I had kind of kept prolonging it further and further and said, when I get to this point, I'll be happy. When I get to this point, I'll be happy. And that was kind of the question that I was gonna ask was like, if happiness was like more of a sliding scale, would you say that you're 70% happy, and like would money change that?
Having money is a...
I can relate to that. My old job was in sales. The nature of sales is to be on a 30-day cycle where you're just trying to hit a certain sales number so you can get a certain amount of money by the next paycheck. And when you're doing it, you acknowledge that you're on a hamster wheel. You're just going around in circles, just doing the same thing over and over and over again. But then life, you start realizing after months that eventually turns into years, life is passing you by. You're missing stuff in your personal life because of your obligation to work. For example, I really didn't have Saturdays off for like the entirety of my 8 years at my old job. There's a lot of things that I miss. And I just remember thinking like back in the day that, man, I'm going to be so thankful for literally every single Saturday that I have off from now on for the rest of my life. Because having to work on Saturdays and just like not being able to enjoy your family for nearly a decade it's honestly very hard. You miss out on some of the big moments that you could have shared with your family because you're out there chasing money. And in a way, I kind of feel like I'm doing that now, but thankfully I feel like I'm doing it with my wife's blessing. I'm always like consulting her. I'm like telling her, hey, I've got X, Y, and Z these days. And if she has something important for me, she lets me know way in advance that, hey, we've got, for example, this Saturday, we're going to a friend of hers baby shower. I had, a prospective customer ask me about this Saturday, hey, would you be available to do a shoot this Saturday? Like, I would really like to go to the shoot hour because, it's a new client. It's really exciting to be like in a new environment. I would really like to be able to do it. I had to tell them, no, I've got like family obligations. So some things inherently have to come ahead of money. Because if nothing comes before money, like nothing matters more to you than money, and your family's going to see that. And in the end, you're just going to be left with you and your money. And that's not the kind of life that I want to live.
Blessing, but it also can be a curse to the wrong people sometimes because they start asking these questions, and if they don't get answered, they kill themselves. Like, that's what happens.
It magnifies your problem.
Because you're like, oh, I'll just keep making more. Like, I never had like a bad problem with it, but I just like really asked these questions, and when I really internalized it, I was like, what is the metric for happiness? Like, what decides if I'm happy? And I realized it came down to one simple thing. It was contentment, like satisfaction and contentment. Yeah. And not just like with everything, but like if I died right now, would I be okay with it? Like with what I've done, with the time that I've spent, like the way that I'm gonna die, right? Not just about dying right now, like, am I dying in a way that I'm proud of dying? And when I really thought about it, I like 2 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm doing this for money. And I had made this money, and I was like, okay, I don't wanna do it for money anymore. I wanna do it for something else. This is not gonna drive me anymore. And I realized like, okay, cool, like I've gone to a scale where I can take care of so many others. And if I keep crushing it, I can take care of more. So that's kind of like the contentment where it's like, oh, cool. Even if I don't ever get to take care of like millions and millions of more people, I'm in the process and pursuit of that, and I'm content with that.
I would almost say that I was happier back when I was working at Chick-fil-A and like being a paintball referee. Like, sure, there were like financial problems, but there was a part of me that didn't feel burdened down by like the weight of, supporting so many other people. Like there is that, responsibility when you become higher up in society and you like have more people that report underneath you, and there's more people that rely on you for their well-being and their family's well-being and, their financial, where I do miss that part. Like I'll sit in bed some days and be like, man, I remember when life was so simple. And so it's those things that get taken for granted that I wish I would have learned when I was younger, and that maybe would have had me push less hard to earn more because I thought that it was going to fix my problems rather than working on fixing myself first.
I'm actually glad that the both of y'all.
That makes me wonder if he's in the wrong industry. Like maybe he's like climbed a ladder where he didn't really want to be. I feel like I'm doing a good job of shaping my life to do the things that I want to do, and I'm being like intentional about ending up exactly where I want to end up at. So hopefully he finds the same peace as well.
Before I did, because I resonated with that so much though, man. It was, when I had like the bulk of my money, right? I gained a shit ton of weight. I didn't have to do shit. Like I'll just wake up to money, you know what I mean, right? I was real like, my ex, we was living together, and she used to say all the time, like those times when I was laying, like I had gained a whole bunch of weight, I couldn't even see myself pee, bro. Like it was nasty. like legit. And my ex was like, baby, you gotta get out for your ass, go do something. Yeah. And I was like, yo, I ain't gotta, like I don't have to do nothing. Like we good, you know what I mean? But the whole thing was, I remember one day, my ex taught me about macronutrients, and then I was able to get in the best shape of my life. And that made me happy. Then she took us to a salsa class. I've been dancing salsa for the last 4 years. I found purpose in that. And my happiness more so comes from the purpose, like the purpose of doing things. Yes. You know what I mean, right? So although I don't have the bread that I used to have to do, I am content because I put myself out there and I make the most out of my situation.
Good talking to you, fellas.
Poor gang unite.
I think it's interesting that he earned money and decided to not do anything. I'm curious to know like how it was that he earned his money, and like maybe he just didn't feel like connected with the way that he was earning his money. and like it didn't like motivate him to be better and do better. I really don't have any takeaways from this video right now. I'm one of those types of people that need to sleep on some of the information that I learned, and then I come up with my own conclusion. It takes days, honestly. But if you have any conclusions that you've reached and you've learned something from this video, feel free to leave a comment below. For more personal finance videos, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I do personal finance, realistic entrepreneurship, and travel. But not much travel right now because we are being realistic entrepreneurs. But thank you so much for watching. And as always, hopefully you've learned something today that will allow you to use money to create the life that you want to live.